The purpose of this video is to try and discuss what we have found to be the best ways to disassemble the KYTronics card reader found in your Genmega or Handheld ATM, and common things to look out for troubleshooting, and best way to go about dealing with them. Once you feel comfortable doing this, it's really not a big deal to do it in the field. I think the first couple times it's a good idea to do it at a bench so you're not going to lose any small parts, and you have a little bit better idea what to look for. But as you become comfortable with it, you can do this in the field as well. Begin by removing the cable from the reader if it's still attached. And when you do this, look in this socket here. You have a row of pins for the cable connector, and look to see if there's any black or dark brown circles around any of those pins that might indicate that something's shorted out. If you see something like that, likely this circuit board has gotten damaged from water or liquid getting in there or something like that, and it's not going to be able to be fixed. But if everything looks clean, you can proceed with your disassembly. Begin by undoing these cables, and what you've got here this is the cable that goes to the read head, and this is the cable that goes to the chip head. This is the chip head here. This is what comes in contact with the card when you insert it. And these remove by just simply popping these little socket pieces up. Be careful with it, and then you can just undo that connector. These connectors, if they look like they have any corrosion on them, you can wipe them off with a little alcohol wipe. You can also put it down on the desk and hit it with a pencil eraser and try and clean it off. And we can do a little bit more of that in a minute. The one in the back, same situation. You lift up on that and come in with a tool. I like to use the edge of a pocket knife, but you can use a flat blade screwdriver as well, and just kind of pop that out. And be really careful. These are fairly fragile, so you don't want to cut it, obviously, but there's your contacts. Next, we can undo the wires in the circuit board and go ahead and pop out this little wire here for the solenoid. This is a solenoid that ejects the card after you're done with the transaction, and you need a little screwdriver for this. If you can get these on Amazon, a full kit like this for like 15 bucks. It's a good idea to get it because you need a really thin Phillips tip screwdriver to get these screws out. Otherwise, it's really easy to strip them. There's 4 screws that hold the circuit board on. And while you're doing this, look at the circuit board itself. If you do have water damage like we were talking about, it's also possible you'll see some chips that may have a burn mark or something like that. Specifically up here, you may see some chips with a burn mark. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and take off this circuit board. The screws all the way out. Okay, when you take off the circuit board, this one, by the way, has a ground wire soldered in place. Normally this is a cable connection, so when you undo this screw, this ground wire will come off. Again, inspect the circuit board and look for any signs of damaged chips. And usually, like I said, it's a very noticeable, ring or burn mark or something on one of the chips. Go ahead and flip it over, and on the back side of this, you're going to see these 2 U-shaped sensors, and these have something that passes in between it, and that triggers to the card reader that something has happened. And I'll show you what those are. But clean these. You can either use an alcohol wipe, or you can blow it with a little bit of compressed air. That's fine. But again, look for any noticeable damage, any burn marks on any of these chips. If everything looks good, then go ahead and proceed with disassembly. And save these screws because they're easy to lose. On the bottom side of this card reader, what you're looking for here, keep an eye on this. Keep an eye on this screw right here. This can get loose, and if it does, just make sure it's tight. It doesn't have to be crazy tight, but just make sure if that gets loose, then the card reader it won't eject cards and can stick. And then let's go ahead and finish disassembling it all the way. This is a little bit tricky. And the first time you do it, you might break one of these little clips. If you do, it's not the end of the world. It will go back together just fine with 3. But you've got a clip here, this one in the back, and then there's 2 more on this side. And the idea is you got to pry up on these just a little bit. This is why I tend to use a pocket knife for this, because I can get underneath it and not put a lot of strain. As I lift up on this, I push up with my finger. I push up just to keep that little bit of a gap going there. And then I go to the back side and I do the same thing on the back. And then this lifts up and you have a little bit of a gap. Keep holding it with your finger and then go to the back and you have another tab in the back here. And once you get that, then this whole thing's going to split apart. This is the reader head in there. And this is the bottom chassis, the card reader. Now these sensors that we were talking about before on the circuit board, this one up here and this one down here, these are triggered when you first insert something into the reader. You see there's a little piece down in here. You make sure that this is in here and it's working. When you press down on that little toggle that comes up is what lets the reader know that you've inserted something. Then there's an additional one as the card slides in here and pushes down on this mechanism to latch it. You've got another piece down here and this has to be engaged. That goes into this lower sensor down here. So with this, what you're looking for is to make sure that this mechanism works. And you can push it with your finger and let it slide. If you get grit or something in here, this piece won't slide correctly. Or if one of these springs breaks or comes off, then it's not going to retract. And it should be a pretty positive thing. You can also check here with this. When this works, the solenoid, when it fires, it lifts up and that triggers this mechanism. So you can see how that works. Make sure all these pieces are here. Make sure that they all move and that there's no gunk in there that's preventing their movement. And that's pretty much it for this part. This is the mag stripe head. Make sure it's clean. Another thing you can do with it, I've seen where someone's tried to remove a card from this that got stuck on this latch and they've been using pliers. This reader head gets bent. So this should be straight. I'm gonna hold that straight. If this gets bent up this direction, then it won't, these stripes need to be able to contact them. These little rectangles here need to be able to contact the magnetic stripe. So make sure this reader head doesn't get bent. It should move a little bit like this. Anyway, so this and then clean all of this out. An alcohol swab. These are ones that I swiped from our first aid kit, but these you can get on Amazon also. Little squares, and it's just got a little bit of rubbing alcohol on them, and use it to wipe off these pieces. Get in here and just really, clean everything up well. Same on the back of this. Get in here and wipe out those little sensors. Clean the bottom of it off. Get any dust, and whatnot. You won't hurt anything with the alcohol. The reader head is another piece now. This comes out. This is sort of just set in here. And once you get this piece out, you can do the same thing. Get in here and clean off those contacts. And you may or may not see a bunch of stuff on there. Common things to get in there are the glue that comes on the back of someone's new chip card. You'll see we'll get a wad of that in here. Going to put this back together. So anyway, go through and clean everything up. And if you need to on these, you can also use a little bit of a pencil eraser. Get in here and clean off the tips of those contacts. And then make sure, hit it again to wipe off any residue. That'll get those good and clean. You can do the same thing with this contact here. So you can see that. And get in here and wipe that off with a pencil eraser just to clean off any oxidation or whatnot. And then go ahead and clean it with the alcohol wipe. Putting this back together, you want to get this chip head in here like that. There's some little beveled plastic pieces, and this just slides down in here and stays. Keep this on the back side, meaning don't let the cable. Okay, so when you go to reassemble this, you've got your reader head down in here. You've got this cable. Make sure it's on this side of the little plastic piece. Make sure it's on this side of the little clip here. Okay, and then set it down. Then take your bottom half of the reader, and you need to put this white tab needs to go through to this side. It's going to go on the inside of this little clip here. I'll try and bring this up here. Put it on the inside of that little clip. Then just simply push these together. This all just snaps in place, and this piece is free to move down here, and your reader head is installed with those little plastic pieces so that it can come up flush. Now go ahead and put your control board back on. When you put this control board back on, it's really important to make sure that it's sitting flat. With those sensors we discussed on the bottom side of that, it's easy to get part of this board lifted up, and then those small pieces won't be able to contact or go through the sensor to trigger it. It's kind of hard to do this while the camera's in the way. And again, this is where it really helps to have the right size screwdriver. If you're trying to fight with these little screws in the plastic and without the right screwdriver, it's really a bear. Now I've let that little ground wire pop off here because that was in the way. Okay, so once the screws are back in there, and you make sure that this board is flat, reconnect the solenoid, give a good look here, look where that little sensor is in there, and make sure that it looks like this board is sitting flat, and this looks good. Now we need to go ahead and put these cables back in. Make sure that the little socket is up, so in this case it's facing that way, and just sort of feed this in from the back. I found for this one in the back, what really helps is to put the card into go ahead and push on this like it has a card inside there, so the chip head is down even though there's no card in here, and this gives a little bit more slack to feed this in. And just be careful with it, it will eventually go in, and then pop this into place to hold the cable down. And you're going to do the same thing on this side. We got to open up the socket first, and then feed that. This one goes on top, whereas the other one on the bottom, so it's a little bit different. And that's pretty much it. Then just check the reader and make sure it works. You can push down on this here to engage the latch, and then push this little black button here, or you can put this in here and then just trigger that little solenoid to push back. Make sure that everything's closed and tight in the back here. And then the next step is to test it in a machine. So if you run into any trouble and this piece is not in here correctly, just take it back apart and start over again. It shouldn't be too bad.